Whether the Unitarian Church of Evanston is your spiritual home, or you are seeking comfort and connection in uncertain times, we are grateful you are with us. We are an inclusive and welcoming community seeking truth in love and striving to nurture the human spirit for a world made whole. We are guided by our principles and values, which remind us in every moment and through every challenge that each of us matters and that we are all connected through the vast and beautiful web of existence. Together, let us remember our oneness, our kinship with one another, and may we hold one another in heart and mind with tenderness and careful attention. There are many links of connection in the Show More section in the YouTube stream, including credits for the readings and links for virtual religious education, for donations, and to be added to our email newsletter. A few announcements. The all-church Zoom meeting continues on Wednesday evenings at 5:30, and all are encouraged to attend. We'll send a reminder email in the early afternoon on Wednesday with the link along with the reading we'll discuss. Please join the Real Team this Wednesday at 7 p.m. on Zoom as we come together to define our work toward dismantling racism in the months ahead. All are welcome. This meeting will include discussion of the death threats, hate crimes, and racist language that Evanston District 65 leaders are now dealing with, the local coverage minimizing these incidents, and our own role in responding. The registration link for this meeting is in the newsletter and on UCE's member-to-member and social action Facebook pages. Today, immediately following the service, we are having a congregational meeting. Voting members of UCE are asked to join the congregational meeting to vote on the candidacy of Reverend Eileen as our next settled senior minister. Here is a message from Board President Jessica Tomel Presto about this meeting.
Hello, my name is Jessica Tomel Presto, and I am President of the Board of Trustees. Today is the day, our congregational meeting to vote on calling our ministerial candidate, Reverend Eileen will happen today, immediately following the service. If you are an eligible voting member, you received a Zoom link in your email box this week. The subject line for that email is Voting for Congregational Meeting. Please click on that link to enter the meeting and vote. Please be sure to close the YouTube live stream of the service before entering the meeting. In order for the vote to happen, we must have a quorum of 40% of UCE's eligible voting members. That's about 160 people. And to call the minister, 80% of those present and voting at the meeting must vote yes. Though our bylaws specify that a yes vote from 80% of the voting members at the meeting is required to call a minister, most ministers see at least 90% as a successful call and will not agree to the call with less. Please be patient as you enter the Zoom meeting. It will take some time to check people in and confirm that everyone is a voting member. If you are not an eligible voting member, you can watch the meeting on the YouTube live stream. There will be one available that is different from the one for the service. Thank you. Please join us after the service today to cast your vote.
And now I invite you to get your chalices ready, set a place for yourself and your family as we join in beloved community. Welcome to worship.
To become is a lifelong process. Nothing is constant, not even the self.
We evolve in the midst of narratives meant only for some, in ways of being made narrow by fear and power.
We must then have the courage to listen to the truth of our own lives, to the wisdom that comes from within, responding without resistance or need to control, but with welcome and curiosity.
This is what ensures our becoming is an unfolding of our truest self.
This lifelong labor cannot be carried out alone. It requires help from friends and lovers, family and creaturely companions who bear witness to what makes us come alive and say to us, listen, look, feel, pay attention to that.
This is loving and being loved.
Telling the stories, sharing in the memories, giving thanks for the relationships, understandings, and experiences past that have shaped us to this day.
This is loving and being loved.
Celebrating new beginnings that excite, holding risks together, leaning into unknowns with the promises of support and companionship.
This is loving and being loved.
Listening to the future calling uniquely to each of us in the midst of all of life's noise. Helping one another to find our place in the shared labor of collective life. Supporting each other in what it is the world's ache is asking from us.
This is loving and being loved.
To say for the first time, this is who I am. This is the truth of my body. This is what I know about myself. This is my name, and this is where my path is leading me.
And to have it heard, have it received, have it affirmed, and then to say it again and again as we change and as the world changes, and to have each proclamation greeted with an open-armed embrace.
This is loving and being loved.
There is no me without you. We shape one another. The sacred that birthed us weaves our lives together so that we can only find ourselves through shared becoming. For my journey and all its winding ways, for yours.
For all the saints who labored for what is, all the kin whose lives made ours possible, for all those yet to come, for whom living our truths today will mean breaking possibilities open for them tomorrow.
We pause. We give thanks. We acknowledge.
This is loving and being loved.
Then the child moved 10 times round
We light our chalice in northern Illinois, on the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, Menominee, Ho-Chunk, Sac, and Fox, also call this area home. We name these in honor and respect. As Allie, Joe, Shirley, Diane, and Linda of the Sine Nomine Covenant Group light the chalice, please join in saying the words appearing on your screen, written for You the Vote by Reverend Ashley Horan. Another world is possible. We say it again and again, even when the proof lies somewhere beyond the horizon, beyond our reach, beyond our imagination. This is our faith. Another world is possible. There are many routes towards liberation, toward freedom, but the abundance of options does not absolve us of the responsibility of acting. Another world is possible. Please join in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please join in singing hymn 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In.
Rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in.
Our Time for All Ages is a message from the future. It is a peek into what might be if we lean in and lead with love, liberation, and imagination. Adrienne Marie Brown, social justice facilitator, healer, and emergent strategist, writes, "All organizing is science fiction. We are bending the future into something we have never experienced. A world where everyone experiences abundance, access, pleasure, human rights, dignity, freedom, transformative justice, and peace. We long for this. We believe it is possible."
Looking back, it's hard to believe that we've rebuilt our community from the ground up with our own hands. The first seeds were planted way back in the terror and tenderness of the pandemic. And then change bloomed in the streets, in the fire and struggle of the uprisings. Around here, we'll never forget the day that the last prisoners were released, walking out into the arms of their loved ones. The easy part was finding work. The Community Care Corps was always looking for people in those days, whether for universal family care, burying border walls, or green new public housing, going up one pod at a time. Yep, it was a good time for busy hands.
Funny, thinking back to the first wave of the pandemic, that's what you really remember. Hands. Washing, scrubbing, disinfecting, washing again, picturing each other's hands, all the hands that had touched whatever we were touching. The hands that packed the box, that picked the tomato, that planted the seed. The hands that stroked the brow, that said goodbye. The hands were us. All of us. That web of hand-to-hand, breath-to-breath relationships was a reminder. We are all entangled, making each other sick, keeping each other alive. That was just one of the lessons of COVID-19. It started in the first great pause, when the smog cleared and the rich fled the cities, when poverty dropped its disguise and racist inequality drew the map of the disease. As the roar of the traffic faded, we arose to birdsong and ambulance sirens. The virus showed us what was truly essential. And we learned again and again that so many of us doing essential work were being treated as sacrificial. From nursing homes to detention facilities, meatpacking plants and fulfillment centers, the virus exposed the cruelty of these warehouses of efficiency and profit. Then, things got worse. In 2023, super droughts led to mega floods. Locusts carved a path across continents and hyper typhoons drove millions from their homes. COVID-23 raced through storm shelters and refugee camps. Supplies ran out again. Meanwhile, dinosaurs roamed the halls of power, bellowing that more sacrifice was needed. But every time they cranked up that rusty old machine called economic growth, the cloud of sickness and death grew.
And we couldn't breathe. Couldn't breathe from the asthma in our polluted communities, from the smoke of those fires. We couldn't breathe with a knee on our necks, in the clouds of tear gas as we shouted, "Black Lives Matter." And that is how the virus changed everything. We finally understood that we couldn't keep patching up the same broken systems. We had to build something new. What was needed was a spark. That spark was us. After months of organizing, the viral rent strike was like a starting gun. Then came the essential workers' strike. Delivery drivers, street cleaners, and farm workers got together and said, "Enough." This time, people didn't just clap from their balconies. We flooded into the streets to join together. One of the leaders was Luciela, a young food courier. When a police bullet stole her life, the crowds exploded in size and then exploded again, spreading across borders like a counter-virus. The sparks look different in every country as the wildfire strikes leapt across borders. Economies ground to a halt, this time blockaded by workers. We lost too many young heroes as states brought out the iron fist, but it was no match for the raised fist of solidarity. Soon, authoritarian rulers started to topple like statues, and new governments were suddenly nervous about ignoring the streets. We joined hands and pushed further, launching the years of repair.
The first step was rebuilding the economy around the core of essential work: food and farming, care for young and old, public health. Not to mention the essential labour of the more than human world, the winged pollinators, the leafy oxygen makers. The Full Employment Act made the new priorities clear, and there was a wave of new worker cooperatives in everything from mental health support to public art and tree planting. Many bosses were made redundant. Our information ecology needed tending too, and so we built a digital commons, vaccinated it against surveillance, and built up our herd immunity to disinformation. Fossil fuels were running on fumes by that point, So we harnessed their final profits to clean up their messes. Whatever we could, we did outdoors. School, theatre, celebrating. At first because it was safer. Then because we realised it made us happier. Nobody talked about missing shopping. Anyway, the right to repair movement meant that a lot of stuff got fixed rather than thrown away and replaced. With life moving at a slower pace, we finally had time to look back. And we began the most important repair of all, repairing relationships. In colonial countries like the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK, those were hard conversations. But truth and reparations commissions helped some of us face the truth about the violent conquests of the past and how they shaped our world. That guided where we repaired and how. It turned out that once we fully funded schools and housing and healthcare, we didn't need those bloated budgets for policing, prisons, and war. And ultimately, the flow of money on planet Earth had to be reversed. So the North finally started paying its debts, and the South finally stopped.
Around here, the Land Back program began the historic process of returning some of the stolen land to Indigenous jurisdiction. In the process, we remembered how taking care of the earth lays the ground for taking care of each other. Within just a few years, we could see the bottom of the river again, and it was safe to drink and fish in its waters. Things aren't perfect, of course. Between mutating viruses and our warming world, there's always new storms headed our way. But when they come, we're ready. With our networks of nurses and neighbors, our small farms and big forests, our systems of care and repair. No one is sacrificed. Everyone is essential.
Another world is possible. These are the joys and sorrows that have been submitted through the Google form found on the homepage of our website. Alternatively, you can send me an email or one to Reverend Susan if you have trouble finding that form. From Michelle Thompson-Hay, please continue to keep Michael Hay's mother in your thoughts. Over the past year, she's survived cancer, heart surgery, a car accident, COVID-19, and a series of mini strokes, leading to a larger stroke. All of this, of course, is made worse by the fact that we're not able to travel to Wales to see her. We are, however, grateful that we can visit via Skype. And while she has difficulty communicating, she can still recognize, understand us, and feel our love. She's truly a remarkable woman. From Jordan Strieber, a joy. My sister Meredith and brother-in-law Austin welcomed their second child on January 6th. Older sibling Haley is not entirely sure about this development yet, but the rest of the family is thrilled to welcome Violet Quinn, to the world. From Laura Tejada, I share a joyful thank you to the UCE folks who sent condolences to me after the death of my cat in October, and an additional joy that a new cat has joined the household. Her name is Moxie, and she is a glaucoma survivor. She joins my other visually impaired cat, Winter, in keeping things interesting here at Hacienda Tejada. Susan Moss is grateful for renewed hope in our democracy and the start of COVID inoculations. From Kristen Larson, a series of joys to share. Craig is in week 2 of 6 of outpatient rehab at Shirley Ryan 3 days a week for 3 hours for physical, occupational, and speech therapy. He's making steady progress, but is still dependent on a walker and Kristen for every step in transition. Friends are driving Craig to and from rehab, and we have a nurse attending the therapy sessions courtesy of Veterans Affairs, giving Kristen needed respite. February 22nd is the 1-year anniversary of our ordeal. Your messages and prayers of support over these many months have carried us through. Thank you. From Sandra Robinson, our Executive Operations Director, the world has lost a truly remarkable man and jazz legend, Julian Jr. Mance, born in Evanston in 1928, made his transition this last Sunday at his home in New York City with his wife Gloria at his side. Junior was not only my favorite jazz pianist, he was a good friend, a kind and gracious man who I had the pleasure of introducing to this congregation in 2013 for his homecoming reunion concert at UCE. I have enjoyed many special times with Junior and Gloria. He touched the lives of friends and fans throughout the world. And finally, Angie Jakowski writes, please keep my dear friends Janet and Lois and all the others who are facing cancer and other life-threatening diseases alone during COVID. Many heavy sorrows and wonderful joys that we hold in our hearts, and we know that these are not the only ones that are on our hearts and minds today. So let us take a moment of quiet together now and read to ourselves the joys and sorrows that have been added to the chat. We hold these in care and tenderness, and I invite you to say aloud any names that you are holding on your heart, those who are sick or who have died, who you are missing. Let's let their names gather on the winds to be held in this community that knows no walls. As we hold together grief, loss, expectation, and joy, let us breathe together, knowing we are not alone and that our strength is in our oneness. I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation with The Future We Imagine by Reverend Anthony P. Johnson, accredited interim minister, community organizer, and activist. Let us call upon the spirit that moves among us, below us, above us, and through us. Let us call upon those who have gone before us, who have shown us the way, who have been with us as guides and examples. Let us call upon ourselves to imagine, to hope, to dream, and to do. That the future may build on the past but not be confined by the past. That the future we imagine will be a new thing and much more and different and better than anything we can imagine. Amen.
Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be a part of the love you give. Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part of the love you give. Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part of the love you give.
Let me be part of the love you give.
UCE remains a vital part of the world and our community. And because we continue to need one another in the blessings of community, we take this time to invite you to give to our shared plate. Today's offering will be shared with the Community Renewal Society, whose mission is to intentionally and decisively transform society toward greater social justice at the intersection of racism and poverty. You may text to give, send in a check, or give from our website. If you send in a check, please indicate in the memo line if your check is for the shared plate offering, your pledge, the capital campaign, or some other giving. Please give as generously as you are able, and may what you give bring you joy.
Thank you for your generosity. Our reading today is from Parable of the Sower, written by brilliant and influential African-American science fiction writer Octavia Butler. It is the story of societal collapse set in the years 2024 through 2027, and the prophet of an emergent religion built upon a belief in an unconventional construct of God and the desire to survive apocalypse. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. God is power, infinite, irresistible, inexorable, indifferent, and yet God is pliable, trickster, teacher, chaos, clay. God exists to be shaped. God is change. God can't be resisted or stopped, but can be shaped and focused. This means God is not to be prayed to. Prayers only help the person doing the praying, and then only if they strengthen and focus that person's resolve. If they're used that way, they can help us in our only real relationship with God. If they help us to shape God and to accept and work with the shapes that God imposes on us, God is power, and in the end, God prevails. But we can rig the game in our own favor if we understand that God exists to be shaped and will be shaped with or without our forethought, with or without our intent. God has been here all along, shaping us and being shaped by us in no particular way or in too many ways at once, like an amoeba or like a cancer. Chaos. There's power in knowing that God can be focused, diverted, shaped by anyone at all. But there's no power in having strength and brains and yet waiting for God to fix things for you or take revenge for you. God will shape us all every day of our lives. Best to understand that and return the effort. Shape God. Create no images of God except the images that God has provided. They are everywhere, in everything. God is change. Seed to tree, tree to forest, rain to river, river to sea, grubs to bees, bees to swarm, from one many, from many one, forever uniting, growing, dissolving, forever changing. The universe is God's self-portrait. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change.
The earth is always shifting, the light is always changing, the sea does not cease to grind rock. The earth is always shifting, the light is always changing, the sea does not cease to grind rock. Forever, 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 for nothing is fixed. Forever, 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 it is not fixed. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them, because we are the only witnesses they have. We are responsible to them. Forever, 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 for nothing is fixed. Forever, 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 it is not fixed. The sea rises, the light fades, lovers cling to each other and children cling to cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light grows. Forever, 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 for nothing is fixed. Forever, 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 it is not fixed. Forever, 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 for nothing is fixed. Forever, 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 it is not fixed. Thank you so much for gathering us.
Thank you.
We are together.
Thank you.
We love you.
The only constant is change. We can try to resist it, ignore it, fight it, but better to accept it, work with it, shape it. The only lasting truth is change. Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower, written in 1993, set in the not too distant future, eerily predicted many aspects of our current reality. She even foresaw the rise of an authoritarian American president using the slogan, "Make America Great Again." She saw the devastation of climate change, the escalation of economic inequality, and the polarization of society leading to forced migration. The main character of this story, Lauren Olamina, is the daughter of a Baptist minister in Southern California, well-versed in the biblical parables of a God she doesn't believe in, including the parable of the sower. This is the lesson that Jesus taught his disciples about the word or truth being cast as seeds. Some land on the path to be eaten by birds, aka the devil. Some land on the wet stone and sprout but do not take root. These are like those who believe in the truth when things are good and sunny, but whose grasp of reality withers in complex and hard times. There are those seeds which land among the thorns made inaccessible by greed and the concerns of the day. And then there are the seeds that land on the fertile ground of real and life-giving possibility, which take root and bear fruit, ever expanding. The lesson here is that the truth must be cultivated, protected, and worked for. It's much easier to sow the seeds of lies and have them spring up as hate and ignorance, division and fear. We've seen as much these past 4 years. The protagonist in Parable of the Sower is writing the sacred text of a new religion based on the discovery of her truth, that God is change. Calling change God may throw you off if you reject the concept of God outright, but if the only lasting truth is change, she argues, why not call it God so we don't forget it? For those who feel comforted by the belief in a loving God, the idea of God as change, cold and cruel, may be unsettling. The author speaks of God as change because it is the one unifying constant that binds us all together and to all things. It is a process relational world view of life, that this world is always emerging. And we are participants, co-creators of the unfolding of life. We are continuously impacted and transformed by one another, while at the same time We are always impacting and transforming all else around us. We can choose to participate knowingly and with intention in that transformation, or we can try to hide. We can try to abdicate our responsibility, or we can try to fight change. Octavia Butler writes, God, or if you can insert the word change, exists to be shaped and will be shaped, with or without our forethought, with or without our intent. Change is inevitable and change is scary, yet in facing the reality of change, we can learn, build courage, even find comfort and cultivate joy if we face it in mutually empowering community. Our country, our world is in deep transition. We have seen nightmares unfold before our eyes, the world literally on fire, climate devastation heaped upon those with the fewest resources, the brutality of a white supremacist police state captured on film, played and replayed in echoing traumatic loops. A pandemic raging without a coordinated or compassionate response, and the rise of fanaticism and demagoguery. And yet, this isn't the final word or the end of the story. The seeds of truth still have some fertile ground to land on. People and communities have continued to respond and organize and coalesce around naming the truth, seeing the change, and trying to shape it with love and for liberation. We are a part of that. We are a part of shaping change. We must begin with our own hearts, our own families, and in our own community to practice the shaping, knowing that, as Octavia says, kindness eases change. I want to thank all of you who have been in conversation with me these past 10 days in classes, workshops, and in the conversations about my candidacy. As I've repeated in those conversations, I'm excited to be able to dream with you about shaping the changes that will inevitably unfold before us. If you choose to call me as your next settled minister through shared ministry, each of us owning our part, we can shape the way this congregation lives into its collective mission and vision, and through nurtured spirits, shapes the world. In our conversations, I named the congregation's priorities as you've expressed them to the search committee and as I understand them. You want a rich worship life that inspires you to live your Unitarian Universalist values more fully. You want to grow a multi-generational community of faith that encourages spiritual deepening for people of all ages, rooted in what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. You want to practice creating beloved community, a truly inclusive community that cares for one another and supports one another through difficult struggles. You want structures that provide clear on-roads to engagement, belonging, and leadership. And you want to be empowered to act collectively for justice in the community and the world, especially focusing on anti-racism and anti-oppression. We had productive conversations about how to live into these priorities. And here are some of the ways I'm hoping that we can together shape change within, among, and beyond our congregation. I hope we can together plan and create worshipful experiences that are multi-generational, multi-sensory, experiential, and embodied, weaving more beauty and music, visual and dramatic arts, ritual, and collective practices into our services. Octavia Butler's prophetic character, Laura Olamina, says, worship is no good without action. With action, it's only useful if it steadies you, focuses your efforts, eases your mind. When we worship, We are celebrating what is worthwhile in our lives and what we want to cultivate and shape out of our common experience. We will be reshaping worship planning, and you will be invited to participate in quarterly worship planning playdates, to bring your creative ideas to the process of shaping worship with, by, and for all of us. Worship is a part of our faith formation. It is the collective form of the spiritual journey we are all on. Our third principle, which I know some of you discussed last week in forum, is acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. I hope we can together more fully live out our promise to be a multi-generational community of faith formation, claiming who we are, living bravely into who we want to be, and sharing that journey compassionately and creatively with people of all ages. A task force is coming together to explore the structure and content of lifelong learning as a whole congregation. I hope we can together expand and deepen our culture of caring. We care for one another in many ways through covenant groups, proximity partners, our caring committee and pastoral care team, and through countless acts of compassion shown to one another in quiet ways. Deep gratitude for all those who have helped hold this congregation in care formally and informally for years. And yet it can be hard to navigate or access the caring resources within our community when close connections haven't yet been formed. The practice of beloved community, ensuring that each of us feels a sense of belonging, is something we all need to own and practice. A congregational care and support team is forming to make the caring connections in our community easier to find and to invite more people into that circle of offering care. I hope we can together answer the call of beloved community and grow in our capacity to be actively anti-racist and anti-oppressive. We know that racism contributes to the realities of the prison industrial complex. We know that racism compounds the discrimination and violence experienced by trans and non-binary kindred. We know that racism magnifies the effects of environmental degradation in the most under-resourced and marginalized communities. It's harder for us to recognize the racism that lives within us and our congregational system. The Anti-Oppression Planning Group has been talking with consultants who can guide us in this work as a mostly white congregation toward deeper awareness and accountability in our work to become an unapologetically anti-racist, anti-oppressive community of faith. We're learning about the proposal of the eighth principle, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. The Board of Trustees is continuing conversations to widen the circle of concern as the UUA's Commission on Institutional Change report helps us recognize and dismantle racism within. There is so much work to be done. I hope and I believe if you call me as your settled minister, we can do the work together, shaping our community and our world with justice. The changes we have undergone as a nation in the last weeks, months, and years have been traumatic. But out of the ashes, a new way can emerge if we commit ourselves to shaping change with intention, if we lean into change with the expectation that we can shape it with wonder and imagination, believing in the transforming power of love. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change, and God exists to be shaped. Let us choose to shape change, inevitable, devastating, and life-giving change with courage rather than fear, knowing our oneness rather than protecting our separateness. Let us turn to one another, adapt, and imagine a future with mutual thriving and promise. I close by inviting you to join me in taking the oath of the People's Inauguration, a 10-day learning and practice collaborative led by Valerie Kaur, Sikh faith leader and activist who I quoted last week, and Baratunde Thurston, advisor to the Obama White House, writer and podcast producer. There's a couple links in the comment section below if you're interested in learning more about either the People's Inauguration or Baratunde Thurston. The People's Inauguration, which kicked off last Thursday, is about reimagining and recommitting to our participatory democracy and to shape change toward collective liberation and revolutionary love. This is the oath they encouraged participants to take with them. I invite you to plant your feet on the ground, to take a deep breath with me, and join me in saying these words if you are so moved. I, Eileen Wiviat, do solemnly vow that I will faithfully execute my role in healing, reimagining, and rebuilding our country and our community, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend dignity, justice, and joy for myself and for all around me, and that I will do so with love. May it be so. May we continually strive to make it so.
As Joe, Allie, Diane, Shirley, and Linda with the Sine Nomine Covenant Group extinguish the chalice, please join in saying the words printed on your screen. Though the flame is extinguished, we carry with us the warmth of community, the light of truth, and the fire of commitment until we are together again. Please join in singing hymn 1024, When the Spirit Says Do.
You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 You've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you gotta sing, oh Lord. You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You've got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you gotta dance, oh Lord. You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 Spirit said dance. Spirit Spirit says laugh. 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 You've got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you gotta shout, oh Lord. You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 Spirit says shout.
Woo! Love that. I close with an adaptation of Affirmation of Hope by Dr. Loretta F. Williams, a sociologist and activist who served the Unitarian Universalist Association as Director of Social Responsibility in the 80s. We, bearers of the dream, affirm that a new vision of hope is emerging. We pledge to work for that community in which justice will be actively present. We affirm that there is struggle yet ahead, yet we know that in the struggle is the hope for the future. We affirm that we are co-creators for the future, not passive pawns, and we rise united in affirmation of our hope and vision of a just and inclusive society. Go in peace and go and vote.